Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra, Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, with my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's episode, we're going to chat about the United States Women's National Team October Friendlies roster drop. We're going to give you some of our reactions. We're going to chat a little bit about what came out of that press conference with head coach Vlatko Andonovski and more. But before we do all that, we want to welcome you all in and remind you to watch all of our Attacking Third episodes, previews, recaps, interviews, and more on YouTube. Please subscribe to our page to get notified whenever we go live at youtube.com/Attacking Third. It dropped, Lisa. It's here. We went live earlier this morning. We had an episode that focused primarily on the NWSL. All of the scenarios that are in play for the league this weekend on their final match day. And we knew that the roster was going to be dropped later today. So we said, let's go live in the morning with NWSL so we can come back in the afternoon and chat all things United States women's soccer. Should we just rattle off these names? Should we just inform the folks who's a part of this roster?
I think we should, because we knew this roster drop was coming. They always give us a little sneak peek about 24 hours before. We had Vlatko media availability that you were able to join. I was able to read a lot about. So we've got plenty to talk about. We've got names, though. We've got a roster, goalkeepers to forwards, some new names in there, some names missing, plenty to talk about. But yeah, let's just run through them to start.
Let's start with the goalkeepers here. We've got 3 listed at the position. Aubrey Kingsbury making her way back into the mix. Casey Murphy and Alyssa Nair is the trio for the goalkeepers heading into Europe to face England and Spain. Defenders listed with 7. Alana Cook, Crystal Dunn, Emily Fox, Naomi Girma, Sofia Huerta, Haley Mace, Becky Sauerbrunn running out the back line there. Midfielders, largest position that is filled at the moment with 8. Sam Coffey, Savannah DeMello, Lindsay Horan, Taylor Korniak, Rose Lavelle, Christy Mewis, Ashley Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan. And for forwards, we've got 6 players rounding out the core with Ashley Hatch, Mallory Pugh, Megan Rapinoe, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, and Alyssa Thompson. 24-player roster. It's going to be narrowed down to 23 for the game day availabilities. And I don't know. Let's just start with first thoughts, first reactions when you saw the names drop.
Honestly, I was a little surprised there was 24. I like that, though. But if you're going to call people in for training camp, let's get 26, 27 in there. But besides the point, I'm not part of the coaching staff, so I can't make those decisions by any means. I think happy to see that Crystal Dunn is listed as a player that can compete in games. She got 3 caps this month with Portland Thorns, and now the last camp in August for U.S. Women's National Team. Dunn was named as a training player, so she was at camp. She trained, but there was no possibility of her competing in the matches. Now she's on this roster. She can compete. I'm thinking we'll see minutes from her, right? Get her right back into the mix, get her going right away, and that's really positive to see. I think Alyssa Thompson, as you mentioned, for those that don't know that name, 17 years old. She's a senior in high school. She's been in the Youth US program for years. She was just at the U20 World Cup, plays alongside Olivia Moultrie for people that might know that name. And this is her first senior team call-up. We're going to talk about her a little bit more, but that was also a name that stood out to me. And then, of course, no Alex Morgan being on this list, and we will talk about that as well. But those are initial gut reactions when I saw this. Otherwise, it's kind of the same old group of players that we saw. A couple names in and out here and there. It's good to see Sam Coffey and Savannah DeMello, 2 NWSL rookies on this roster. DeMello still looking for her first cap along with Thompson, the only 2 uncapped players that are on this roster. But yeah, those are, I guess, the top bullet points, 3-4 that stood out to me. Sandra, what about you when you saw this list? Anything jump out to you in terms of players or positions or who was or wasn't there?
Maybe not so much who wasn't there. I mean, what we've seen out of the CONCACAF W Championship from July is that the collection of players that were there, participated within that tournament, are mainly the players that we're seeing close out this calendar year for the United States Women's National Team, with the additions of some newer faces and a couple other players in light of some injuries, right? So we have seen the the current sort of temporary departure of a player like Emily Sanet or somebody like a Kelly O'Hara. They were absent for the friendlies that took place against Nigeria. They have lingering injuries. They were shut down also for the Spirit as well. So they have been absent, and we saw Alyssa Thompson get called in here in light of Alex Morgan having carrying a knee injury or a knock to the knee. We'll just refer to that. So I was looking for maybe a couple of new names, but we got literally one. I don't know at this point if I would consider somebody like a Haley Mace or a Savannah DeMello as like a new name for this roster, because they were called up for those same players that I just mentioned to sort of round out and flesh out the 23 player roster. So 24 players for this one, 23 who will be available between the two games. But I'm excited for to see a name like Alyssa Thompson on this list. I think it still sort of shows that the pool is ever expanding, that the bubble of players is pretty large compared to probably some programs across the world. But a player who is coming off of participating in that Youth World Cup like you just mentioned, and has a lot of hype around them. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a player that find themselves making the decision as some other young players before her has made, possibly weighing their options, in terms of the potential in possibly going pro. That is how much Alyssa Thompson is sort of standing out in some of these youth programs, right? So, Gatorade Player of the Year, I believe she's already signed to Nike, so there's a number of things that are already, have already been in the works for this particular player. And I would imagine, this isn't just some small opportunity, so much has been made about these friendlies coming up for this United States women's national team senior program, that the fact that they're traveling overseas, they're going to Europe, right? They're going to England. They're going to be, posted up against, the Lionesses, but also 90,000 people in Wembley. And then just in front of them, there's, the potential to play Spain and their side and go up against their program as well. So this is not, this isn't some little teams or anything like that. These aren't some unknown programs. These are top 10 ranked teams that the United States are going to try to close out their calendar year against. And then the horizon, it's Germany, right? We talked about that as well. So in these press conferences, we'll get more into that as well. I mean, Alyssa Thompson was this player that was people were kind of circling because they're just like, hey, this is actually a new name coming into the fold as you're going up against, three very successful national team programs right now. So that included myself. I was also very, very hyped to see that as well.
Yeah, I mean, Alyssa Thompson is a player. I know people in our chat are asking, like, who is she? How do we know her? Some people recognize her name. She's been in the U.S. youth programs, as we touched on. She was just in the U.S. U20 World Cup in Costa Rica in August. She had a goal and an assist throughout that tournament. The U.S. actually didn't make it out of the group stage, so not the best as a team tournament for the U.S., but she's incredibly young. She's a senior in high school, 17 years old. She has 8 U20 caps and 4 goals. So she is eligible for the U20 FIFA World Cup, the Women's World Cup coming in 2024. But the fact that she's on this roster is huge, because if she can start getting training camp alongside other forwards like Sophia Smith, Mallory Pugh, I mean, Trinity Rodman is here. And the fact that is the group of forwards, along with Megan Rapinoe, who's going to bring that veteran mindset and leadership to this group. When you look at someone like Mallory Pugh, who got called into this camp at 16 years old, and then Sophia Smith, who was one of the youngest to ever be called in, also at 16 years old, and was called up in 2017. It's the off-field mentality, how you conduct yourself at this type of level, that players like Rodman, Smith, Pugh can help Thompson with. So I think bringing Thompson in at this point with all of those other players that were in her shoes just a few years ago is really, really crucial for her I mean, Thompson is a player that's in MLS Next. She plays on an academy boys team with MLS Next. And I read an article during the U20 World Cup that she had done about how when she plays with the boys, she actually likes it so much better because they're bigger than her, they're stronger than her, they're much faster than her, and she has to rely on other aspects of her game to compete with them, and she does because she is on a U17 Academy boys team in MLS Next, and now getting this call up, I think it's huge for her, for the youth program, and I think it's also a little glimpse into what Vlatko Andonovski is looking at and looking for in players, because on this roster there's no Alex Morgan, there's no Margaret Purse, there's a number of other injuries that players are dealing with that have left them off. Katarina Macario, Kristen Press. So it opens up a little bit for plenty of different players, whether they're in the NWSL, in other leagues. But if you're in the youth program, you've got eyes on you, and now it's an opportunity for Thompson.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even with the finish that the U20 team had, it was a tough group also that they were in. Like, let's call it like what it was. It wasn't, and I guess you would maybe refer to it. You could have referred to it as a bit of a group of death. I don't know if they actually use those terminologies within the youth systems, but I'm going to use it and bring it in and try to attach it to that to sort of like make note of that for folks maybe looking at her inclusion in this roster and saying like, well, like you're part of a team that maybe didn't necessarily make it to very far within those type of World Cups. But I would imagine that her inclusion in this one is to sort of, see if, she has what she can bring into these trainings at the senior level of these camps, because we're talking, again, very, very young player, high school player, has her sister Giselle also is like, a player that's coming up in the youth programs as well. So these are the Thompson sisters right there. These are names that we're probably going to hear for quite some time. And I don't know if I would say that I was necessarily shocked to see her inclusion on this roster, but maybe a little bit surprised. I didn't necessarily anticipate that a player, she would be included in a roster like this, like this one, heading over to Europe. So it's going to be probably a very, very good experience for a player of her caliber, and we'll see if she's selected amongst any of these matches that come up against either England and or Spain. But I think with looking at the players that are making their return and perhaps the new face that's in the crowd, I think the other thing that folks sort of take a look at whenever these rosters drop is the omissions, right? Like who's missing. And we touched a little bit on how Alex Morgan isn't being included in this roster, referred to in the press release initially as a knee injury that she's dealing with, but sounds like when asked about it in the press conference, Andonovski alluded to it also as something maybe a bit more precautionary, not something that they want to aggravate further, perhaps with heavier match loads on it. So unknown, right? I guess we'll find out for sure how tough that knee injury is with San Diego Wave having a match tomorrow on Friday against North Carolina Courage. I had mentioned specifically within the press conference when asked about it, if the game that they were going up against England against was perhaps a World Cup final, then she'd absolutely play, but this is not the scenario. So the decision was made, for her to not participate in this one. And, mentioned, players like Emily Sonnet and Kelly O'Hara not, a part of this roster, as they weren't part of the rosters in September either. But an interesting note that Margaret Purse was not amongst the forward core for this match. And this is a player that has largely spent time with the national team throughout the duration of 2022, was a part of that CONCACAF W championship squad that qualified for the World Cup, that qualified for the Olympics, that qualified for the Gold Cup, and won the whole darn thing right in July. And while she was a part of those September friendlies, is not a part of these this international window to head over to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I think Purse is definitely a player that's missing for not a reason, right? Like Alex Morgan is dealing with a bit of an injury. It's really good to hear that it's not as serious as it could be, considering, as you mentioned, he said if it's a World Cup final, she's playing in it. So it's looks to be okay at this point. She's also with San Diego heading into a playoff push. Will she play this weekend? I think that's also a big indicator, but I don't think it means that Morgan is out of contention for this U.S. soccer team by any means. But yeah, I mean, Purse kind of without injury to her, she's been playing consistently for Gotham, and her not being listed on to this roster might be a bit of a shock to some people, but I'm not all that shocked. I really haven't been impressed with what Purse is giving me week in and week out with Gotham. And Gotham's been struggling. There's no doubt about that. They've picked up consecutive losses that have broken a record in the NWSL. It's not a positive thing to see, but as a player that wants to compete internationally for the United States, you have to be a game changer at your club level. And I think Christy Mewis is someone that's on the verge of having those games of not always fantastic, but she still provides those sparks of intense, fantastic soccer. And so she's on this roster. And as Vlatko and Andonovski said, a dip in performance for Margaret Purse. She's got 3 goals on the year for Gotham, and she hasn't scored a goal since the end of July. So yeah, a bit of a dip for her, I would say. As a forward, you look at those stats. Are you scoring goals? Are you creating chances? Are you getting touches into the box? Are you being a catalyst for your team? And are you causing chaos for your opponents? And perhaps that hasn't been at 100% for Margaret Purse, and that's why she's not called in. It doesn't mean she won't be back, though.
Is that a pun? Because I love puns. But no, I hear you on all the points that you're making. I think, it's just one of those. I think it's just one of those absences that you take note of, and you sort of also try to line up the circumstances that are involved in it, right? So, like hearing Vlatko kind of speak about it in the press conference and alluded to the fact that, hey, like her form is taken a dip, and then kind of connecting those dots a little bit to, club play a little bit, her performance with Gotham over, the last two maybe is a little bit different compared to 2021 and 2022. But her club play is what, essentially got her, more call ups into, Andonovski's program here. So I'm curious, you start sort of looking at the what's left in the calendar year. It's the final match weekend of NWSL, and Gotham has absolutely struggled this year, right? So it's kind of like, where is the opportunity to improve one's form, or to show one's form, or improvement within those areas, or within the position specifically? Because one of the things that happened during Andonovski's time, and Purse being one of these players that has been called in under his tenure as head coach, is he absolutely made the switch for Purse, initially being called in as a defender, as an outside back, and under his time she has been pushed higher up the pitch, which I know many of us out there were excited about. But these current forms with someone like Sophia Smith or Mal Pugh, right? He mentioned Alex Morgan, obviously, and just sort of saying like this isn't a time to maybe sort of have her included in this particular roster going overseas. But it's just like the timing of everything, and you're just kind of like, I'm wondering again where that opportunity is going to come for somebody like Purse to go ahead and get back on track, and she's been pretty honest and open in some Gotham FC media availabilities, talking about the tough season that they've been having, with the club and everything, and just trying to kind of get back to brass tactics and fundamentals. So I'm eager to see how she, performs over this last weekend. I don't know what that's going to mean for the remainder of the games and the national team for the calendar year. I have to imagine that if she's not getting called up into these European friendlies, that perhaps that's not going to be the case against the friendlies against Germany as well. So I'm wondering when, might be the next time that we do get to see a Purse involved in these camps. Will it be in a January camp or something like She Believes Cup, et cetera, et cetera? So curious to say the least, right? But it's always something that people are going to take a look at and wonder about for sure. But something else that I wanted to maybe point out with this roster kind of talked about it a little bit positionally, but the midfielders is the position that's filled with the largest amount of players. There are 8 listed here across the midfielders. Lisa, is there anyone in here that you're kind of looking at and saying like you want to see maybe a little bit more from against these next programs in particular?
I'm going to call out a player, not because we haven't seen enough from them, but I think I want the opportunity given to Sam Coffey to play in these types of situations. This is a big pair of friendlies coming up. I mean, the first one against England at Wembley, the biggest crowd that the U.S. will ever play in front of for a friendly. And of course, I think we're going to see Rose Lavelle, Lindsay Herrera, and Andy Sullivan get starts, but I want to see players get time, and Sam Coffey is one of them that's been called in and has done tremendously for Portland Thorns. He's the player that Vlatko Andonovski said, hey, this could be an MVP candidate for the year. So prove it. Like, let's see what she can do against European champions, England. Let's see that. Ashley Sanchez, too. I want to see consistent minutes from her. Savannah DeMello comes into this camp without a cap. I honestly, I don't know if she'll get one, to be completely frank. When you look at the depth of this midfield group, I just don't know if DeMello will get a cap. But I think it changes things also. Taylor Korniak being in there. We saw the combination play between Korniak and Alex Morgan, how they combined so well with San Diego. We saw them do it during the CONCACAF W Championship. Now with Alex Morgan gone, does that change Korniak's role a little bit? Not so sure about that. I think we'll see how it unfolds. But Sam Coffey and Ashley Sanchez are players that I would love to get consistent minutes against England, against Spain, if that game is played, to kind of develop them and their depth at the international level.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. I think, if there's opportunity for some of those younger players to continue to get looks by this coaching staff against these specific teams in the England and or Spain, if there is room to see somebody like an Ashley Sanchez and what she could bring against oppositions. I mean, we've seen, there's literal World Cup highlights of Rose Lavelle and Lindsay Herrera against these teams. So I'm curious. I'm with you. Like, is there a room or be time for somebody like Sam Coffey to get minutes against either of these teams, or somebody like in Ashley Sanchez as well, and not listed as a forward, but I'm absolutely keeping a similar eye on Trinity Rodman in that category. Like, is there going to be room or opportunity for these types of players to get these, like, what would be ultimately very significant minutes? I think there's been that storyline around this particular 23 to 26 players that we've seen kind of called into camps over, even if we just narrow it down over the last 4 months, let's say since June, for them to get the opportunity in front of it. So like players like Girma, players like Sofia Huerta or Emily Fox, and like I'm saying, like with Sanchez or somebody like a Rodman, like what minutes are we going to see from them, and how much? Like, are they going to be given the opportunity to start a game, or are these like players that you want to come in and sort of be like the game changers, and sort of see like how they can react to a certain game situation or scenarios off of the bench, right? So I'm curious about that for sure. I think within just sort of touching on some of those defenders, mentioning Girma now, like you also mentioned DeMello within the midfielders, but I mean, Haley Mace making a return to this roster as well among the defenders here.
Yeah, I think Haley Mace is one that I kind of highlighted and looked at, as well as like Taylor Korniak. I know when Korniak got called in for the CONCACAF W Championship, it was a little bit like, oh, okay, like let's see what she can do. And I think she's done well. She's made it back onto this. Haley Mace, another player that got called up most recently in August for the pair of friendlies there. And she's got 5 appearances to her name, 3 in 2018, 2 in August. And I think Vlatko Andonovski likes what he sees from her in her club play. And how can you not? With Kansas City, Mace has done a tremendous job ending this season with really like playoff contention. They're fighting for the Shield. Like I think it's a great call up to bring Haley Mace into this. I mean, before we pivot a little bit, I just want to jump on something else too. Like a number of other players that maybe aren't on this list. Obviously, we talked about Alex Morgan and Margaret Purse, but Kelly O'Hara dealing with those hip injuries, so that's why she's not on here. She hasn't been playing for Washington Spirit. A number of players dealing with like season-long injuries. So that's Tierna Davidson, Katarina Macario, Kristen Press, Tobin Heath is lumped in there. I'm probably forgetting some. Julie Ertz is on maternity leave.
Katarina Macario is making her way back from an ACL.
Yes, Katarina Macario. Emily Sonnet is not on this list. She's not playing with Washington Spirit. She's got a SEI injury on her foot.
Yeah.
Abby Dahlkemper also not called into this camp. She's been dealing with injuries, but she's getting more and more time and more minutes with San Diego Wave FC, but not called into this camp. I'm not too surprised about it though. Like there's a lot of other strong central defenders and defenders all around this roster that can fill in.
Yeah, I am. I think it's going to be there's going to be a certain level of excitement to sort of, take in these final matches in 2022, whether they're the ones against England or Spain or the pair of friendlies that will take place against Germany to close out the year in November. And I think looking at these matches down the stretch of the calendar and looking ahead to 2023, this might be the final like window of time to make an impression on the coaching staff for 2023, because I would imagine come 2023, so many of the players that you've listed, including Sam Mewis, Williams, within those, like, these are players that could possibly make returns and for those final months of preparation in 2023, those January camps that come in early 2023, rolling into a She Believes Cup or any possible April windows, right? To be able to sort of finalize those World Cup rosters, which usually come in late May and or June ahead of the Summer World Cup. So I am curious about it. Within the press conference, Andonovski was asked about that, and in terms of these games in front of him, like how much of it is going to be like you want to really go out there and grab these wins versus like still continuing some sort of evaluation, even if it is amongst players who have already had some time together. And of course, you're not going to be the coach of the number one ranked team in the world and not allude to the fact that, like, of course, you're going to try to win the game. But he did mention that there isn't necessarily a huge emphasis on going out there against England and or Spain and making sure that you're getting these like outrageous sort of 90-minute plus games types of performances and wins. That he really does want to the coaching staff to present certain challenges to the team and see how certain individuals or collections of individuals respond to those challenges going up against these particular oppositions. So
I mean, I think it's a great point you make about these players that are being called in right now need to make incredible impressions based on the talent of the players that are currently injured and will be back in just a few months' time. I mean, when you look at like the defenders, Crystal Dunn is already back in this list, which takes up another spot. And when you look at players like Tierna Davidson that are coming back in, like that's another spot that I think it's intense right now for these players that are getting their first call-ups, their second call-ups. We just mentioned them, players like Taylor Korniak in the midfield, Haley Mace in the back line, Alyssa Thompson up front. There's a lot of question marks come before the World Cup that still need to be answered based on players' availability.
Yeah, I think it'll depend on certain players and their level of fitness and where they are in their timeline of things. I mean, shout out to Snacks podcast, right? The show hosted by Sam Hughes and Lynn Williams. They're two players that we've had on Attacking Third quite often, and love their show. Big fans of their show as they're fans of ours to come on here and always speak with us. But Mewis, basically speaking on and thanking everybody for well wishes, and mentioning that when she is ready, she will be making a more extensive, comment on her injury that has sort of kept her out this year. So I would imagine that there's still news to come for a number of these players who are dealing with this sort of, more longer term type of injuries that have kept them out of 2022 as 2023 kind of rears its head. But I would imagine that some of these players, and probably maybe younger and less experienced players on this roster at the moment, might be paving, making way for players who perhaps might be towards the end of their rehab from their injuries in a certain timeline of their fitness, and reintegrating some of these players that we have seen out, whether, like, for example, if it is somebody like a Turner Davidson or a Katarina Macario, but someone who's already, like you mentioned, making that transition. We touched very briefly on Crystal Dunn, but we definitely want to chat about her at length with reason, because she's making her return to this U.S. women's national team roster as a full roster participant. So there were headlines around Crystal Dunn's participation in the previous camp in September around those friendlies against Nigeria, but she had only been called up as a training player to participate alongside her fellow teammates in preparations for those September friendlies against Nigeria. But now she is officially named for the October window and will be available for selection come these match days against England and Spain. Look, I'm thrilled to see it. We are huge, Crystal Dunn fans on the show.
Sure.
We miss seeing her on the pitch, and her comeback has been extraordinary, quite frankly, having baby Marcel in mid-May, and now, bringing it on and turning it on in the final months of the year to sort of get back to playing. And we maybe it was something about September, right? So we saw Crystal Dunn get called into these September training camps, participated a bit, has been a constant present with Portland Thorns throughout this club season, during her pregnancy and post-pregnancy as well. And we've seen her make 3 appearances around 20 minutes or so, right? She's building slowly back. So I'm not too sure how many minutes we might see from Crystal Dunn, if any, quite frankly, going into these games. But the fact that she's available,
I think we'll see her. She'll get it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I was in this press conference and I asked Andonovski specifically about Crystal Dunn. I said, I'm going to get in this media room and, virtually and ask him specifically about Dunn. She is listed as a defender once more for these friendlies. But listen, I think Crystal Dunn is one of the most versatile players on this team, and in soccer across the globe, quite frankly. And someone who has spent all of her, not just the majority, but all of her NWSL club career playing higher up the pitch, whether that was specifically been in the front line or, within midfields across Portland and in North Carolina as well. So she's someone who has been a part of this national team program for quite some time and has mostly seen a certain level of success at that fullback position. I mean, it was where she won the World Cup, right, with this United States women's national team. And, being asked about her position on it, Vlatko just gave a very, very head coach type of answer and just sort of saying, yeah, she's listed as a defender. We primarily view her as a defender, but that's not to, close the door on the fact that we
breaking our hearts.
Yeah, that's not to close the door on the fact that we could see her utilize in other positions. Again, I believe it when I'll see it. I guess it's one of those kind of things, right? But I'm not going to act like I'm not thrilled to see Crystal Dunn available for selection on this roster. I am.
Exactly. I mean, I think everyone is thrilled to see her back on this roster. You alluded to it. If she'll get minutes, I think she'll get minutes. She wouldn't be on a training roster a month ago and now be on the real roster if she wasn't going to get minutes. I think she will. We'll see her out there. I would love to see kind of how she slots into that back line with Emily Fox there and the center backs between Cook, Germa, Sauerbrunn, like kind of what the rotation is between that back line and how it plays out. Because as you mentioned, Vlatko said he wants her in the back, and she is incredibly strong there, especially for this United States team, because she can be that leader and control the ball and slow the pace of play while also getting up and down the flanks and contributing into the attacking part of the game for the United States. So if we see her, it'll probably be in the back line, but he didn't totally close the door on higher up the pitch. We got to see. We got to see. Come on, Emily Fox. Battle out for that position. Force Dunn elsewhere.
I trust my eyeballs. And when I see Crystal Dunn playing higher for the U.S. Women's National Team, that's when I'll believe it, and I'll celebrate.
We'll have a cheers.
I will
on
celebrate.
The podcast.
Yeah, we'll celebrate. No, it's something to think about. I mean, look, they called in Alyssa Thomas, and that's cool. I'm very, very excited for that. But if the idea is to get different looks in that attacking core, with the additions and the rise in current performances, and somebody like an Emily Fox or somebody like a Sofia Huerta, why wouldn't you humor Crystal Dunn in those areas, right? So again, we'll see it when it happens, and that's when I'll believe it. But looking forward to covering these matches. We'll have more to say about them closer to their match days. I'm sure we'll be doing previews for both of these games where everybody can tune in and take a look at as well. In the meantime, make sure you all tune in to NWSL action kicking off this weekend. You can catch so many games on Paramount Plus. We're going to get some real big decisions happening this weekend. The Shield's on the line. First place and second place are on the line. We'll make sure that we'll have you all updated as usual.
Check out our preview that's already out there
about we literally just did the preview this morning. So if you missed that, if you're joining us this afternoon, you can go back and check the preview for all the NWSL matches that we did earlier this morning. And make sure you tune in to the United States Women's National Team on their European friendlies. They will be facing off against England at Wembley Stadium in London on October 7th, and then they will move on to Spain, where they will play on October 11th at El Sadar Stadium in Pamplona. So with that, thank you all so much for listening to Attacking Third, joining us multiple times today on these episodes. Make sure you download, follow, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Subscribe to us on YouTube to know whenever we go live. The playoff race will conclude this weekend with final matches in the regular season, so tune in on Paramount Plus all weekend, and make sure you check out the weekend preview as well. We'll be back on Monday to recap all of the shenanigans from the weekend. For Sandra, Herrera, and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.